world would be like the sun being the Shiva and the sunbeam being Shakti. So Peter shares with me the importance of visiting the temple for those in attendance today. Shiva is seen as the most perfect husband. Blessings are sought from him today for those in need and seeking to manifest in their life. He adds, nearby is another temple we can visit, as it will not be as crowded. It is the Hanuman temple. We walk over and are able to proceed as the crowd clearly was focused on seeing Shiva today. We spent time in the temple with Hanuman present, as well as each trinity and their consorts. Eva rings the bell after giving a small donation. The bell aids in taking a wish to the deity. Now I'm ready to return to the clinic. It's quite warm, and we have 30 to 45 minutes to walk back to the clinic. I also have a Shirodhara procedure happening soon. As we walk back, more cows greet us. They roam the street looking for food. Most look benign, but occasionally a cow can look very fierce. I make room for them wherever I see them. Suddenly, I hear a squeal in the distance. We see pigs in a cluster nearby, free to roam the streets as well. So, as I shared, it can be quite interesting and very challenging at times in terms of walking around. But certainly, I have never felt threatened or unsafe in terms of walking around, especially where we are in Nagpur. It is more of a suburb, so to speak, and Nagpur in and of itself is not a big city compared to Delhi or Chennai or Mumbai for sure. It maybe has, I think they're actually at 1.5 million people at this point. But where I'm located, or where the clinic is located, is actually next to a set of British government buildings from back in the day when the British were ruling India. And Nagpur is literally smack dab in the center of India. And the Brits realized in their efficiency that that would be a good place to have some major government facilities. And so the Indians have taken it over, and it's now, you know, their own military and other programs that are available. But what's nice is there's very large trees, nice walking paths in this area. And so it makes for a very pleasant time when one has time to take a walk in the community there. So the last thing I wanted to share would be the one of the mornings, early mornings for me on chapter 4, day 4. And I'll read the haiku here. Warmed oil to third eye, blissful, soothing, most calming with Shirodhara. Day 4, a thunderclap awakens me in the middle of the night. The rumbling sky keeps me up as the storm rages. Eventually I fall back asleep and I'm up before the alarm, feeling rested. I feel less sore physically as well. My mind feels really clear today. I hold a sense of awareness and gratitude in my heart. Words flow easily in my journal. Much love fills my heart center for myself and for those around me. Accepting love and being cherished is a part of my life I'm choosing to experience in this moment. The words are simple, but profound for me. Yoga starts a little later today, as Priti, the yoga teacher, had a delay at home. Her daughter needed extra help with her hair before she went to school. Priti smiled with the wisdom of a mother. There are certain things that only the mother can offer our children. Hearing this, I see the expectations for mother here as no different from what we might expect in our own culture. Yet, I know that the father in the US is beginning to take on more of a nurturing role. Priti and I explore new twists today on the floor. The pranayama with the mantra is a little bit more difficult to do, but I make a good effort at it. Pranayama is breath work. At the end of the class, it feels good to move the body with a familiar sequence of asanas. I choose to move into Shavasana, which is the corpse pose, the last pose in yoga, instead of an extended meditation today. It feels good to do. Breakfast is calling me with some chai. Nitu, the cook, serves me with a breakfast grain that I'm not familiar with, but it appears to be a form of couscous. It's garnished with cilantro. The chai is fresh and it warms my heart. I eat alone today. The schedule changes, so I'm on the table earlier. I finish my meal and then prepare to go downstairs for treatment. I walk outside before my treatment starts. The day feels very fresh. I walk around and the clinic is coming alive with the rituals of the day. I see the honoring of the Guru Bhagwan with the placement of his picture in the foyer. Sankara, another client there, greets me and walks with me to the Hanuman shrine. The ghee is always burning, as is the incense for Hanuman, who graces a special place near the back of the clinic. Hanuman is the monkey god who serves Ram and Sita. He is seen as a symbol of prana. Without prana, there is no life. Shankara shares, Hanuman is a symbol of loyalty, and calling upon him allows for success in your life. See, he also holds herbs in his left hand that are called to heal. With reverence, Shankara and I stand in silence as we gaze at Hanuman and offer gratitude for his presence in the clinic. After filling out the daily form of assessment, I'm aware of how much has shifted just in the few days since I've arrived. I feel a calmness that is notably different from the day before. The herbs are assisting me with my digestion. I notice the simplicity and the nourishing aspects of food I receive each day supporting me. With travel, and this is true for all of us, constipation often is present due to the lack of routine. It creates what we are calling a vata imbalance. Here, the internal basti and the yoga moves that help support digestion allow me to be as regular as possible. So I want to mention about food as medicine. That's a theme that I have in my book. I really want to have people be aware that the types of food that we eat are actually needing to be specific to our constitution, to our, what they refer to as dosha. And so I'm bringing that up because I know that we all enjoy finding the right diet for ourselves. And what I find with not with Panchakarma, with Ayurveda is that there's tools within determining your constitution that help you with guiding your food choices. And it's very specific to you. I see it as a form of personalized medicine and can be quite amazing in supporting your constitution. So I just wanted to mention that and wanted to pause here and see if people wanted to chat a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed hearing your reading and those passages.
Mm-hmm.
Present your experience through something of almost like a travel guide. So what I'm curious about is how much of the book is memoir, and then do you have some practical tools and practices that you talk about in regard to Panchakarma?
I do. In fact, there's a section of where I break down what each of the bodywork interventions are and the value of them. The other thing is, it is very much a memoir, but I wanted it to be a prescriptive memoir so that there are ideas in terms of self-care that anybody can actually incorporate into their life. And there's actually, early on, I have a screening of looking at toxic patterns in one's life, and for a person to do a toxic assessment and for them to think about ways to support themselves. And then in the back of the book, I actually have a section available so that people, if they wanted to do a certain ritual or routine on a daily basis and picking that, they could actually do that and follow themselves in terms of that process of change. A simple thing that we all can do is oleation of the body, which is something that's fairly different and unique for our culture, but especially, so there's two things in terms of living in Albuquerque: altitude and high desert. And so we have high altitude and we have desert climate. And so we as general population are more inclined to have challenges with what we call a vata imbalance. And that lends towards anxiety issues, sleep issues, dry skin, constipation, many of the things that nationally and actually internationally people struggle with. But because we have already the challenge of a higher climate and altitude, it makes us, a double whammy. And then adding it, if you're over 50, that's another variable that people are struggling with. So oleating your body, the type of oil you would use varies with the season, but also in terms of your constitution. And that's where an Ayurvedic clinician can support you. If you want just some basics, there's both the Ayurvedic clinic, but also Banyan Botanicals, which is available here in town. They have resources of where you can check out and see what your dosha is and actually find a clinician to help, with sorting out the best way to approach that.
Awesome. Thanks for those resources. I always like doing the dosha tests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are fun.
Definitely a pitta, but after the winds we've had these last few nights, I know we're all a little vata deranged.
Right.
So we'll all go do some abhyanga after we're finished here with the event.
Right.
Some other questions coming in. Todd would like to know how you're able to keep a sense of India in your daily life here in New Mexico.
Well, I like that question. I actually have Punjab. I have several outfits from India. So especially when it's really hot, I'll wear them here in town. And then within my home, I actually have a fair amount of art from India, and I have rugs from India. So all that actually helps to bring that, back into my life.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn Flynn. Nice to see you and your beautiful red hair. She's got a couple of questions. She says, though we talk about self-care a lot in American culture, we still don't seem to be very good at doing it. Why do you think that is? And what would you like to see people do as they access your book? How can people get into this? What's a good first step?
Right. So what I say is make maybe a list of what your top 2 or 3 concerns are about your well-being, and pick one thing that can be most beneficial. So for me, if anxiety, for example, is one of your top challenges, the abhyanga is very helpful, the oleation, so that process helps because it's at 2 things. Our body needs healthy oils, and oftentimes we try to eliminate oils if we're on a certain diet for one reason or another. I think people are doing that less because, especially with the keto diet, people are aware of the beauty and the need for oil in the diet. But olive oil and coconut oil are good choices, certainly olive oil. I know sometimes when people have higher cholesterol, they have concerns about coconut oil. But adding the oil to your diet and not to like steamed vegetables, and cooking with ghee or clarified butter, that's another thing that can actually help. So adding a certain amount of oil, either with, by taking it internally or applying it to your body, are 2 ways that you can make a difference. And then finding, I'll mention caffeine, okay? Reducing caffeine would be a way to reduce one's anxiety, because I know we tend to be in a culture that likes our caffeine. So, but I would say pick 2 or 3 things that are like your biggest setbacks, and then maybe take a look at the book or some of the resources I mentioned and say, what are 2 things that I can start doing and adding it into my daily schedule? It's in the doing of making that happen. And my understanding is it takes about 90 days for a new habit to happen. 40 to 60 days is, okay, but 90 really makes a difference. And so what I've done is, especially if I'm trying to incorporate a new thing, I'll actually mark the calendar and then mark it off day by day so that I have a sense of perspective of making some gains in that way. And the other thing is, if it's possible, is partnering with somebody that's wanting to make a lifestyle change. I know when I exercise with another person, that commitment is more likely to happen. So, partnering with somebody and saying, I want to make these two changes, the buddy system is also another way to help support that process.
I think that's a great idea. And that might even be something you could do during the pandemic in a virtual way or as a socially distant partner for some yoga or something. Do you have any thoughts, Dr. Pentz, on why self-care is difficult to Americans?
Well, I think we forget that we're spiritual beings in a human body, and that we actually have to attend to our bodies in a different way. By our body is a temple, and everything that we are doing to it in terms of our thoughts, our feelings, the foods we eat, the way we treat it, ends up being a challenge. And so if we want to enhance the quality of our life, we actually need to understand what are the challenges that are being posed. What are we doing? And that goes back to that toxic assessment that I mentioned. And looking at how can I detox myself in a way that's supportive and loving and kind, to oneself. I wanted to mention one of the meditations that we worked on with the mindfulness process was befriending yourself was the meditation. And bar none, of the 7 residents I'm working with, they said that was their favorite meditation because that was the one they struggled with the most. And so looking for ways to befriend yourself through meditation, through lifestyle habits, and bringing loving kindness into your being can help then to make steps in that direction. That loving kindness, we're, I think, great as a culture to try to be kind to other people, but we really need to work on being kind to ourselves ultimately, so that what we want to give to others comes from a really deep and valued place. One description I like to give to people is we have to fill our own chalice before we can give to others. And that was a struggle for me, especially in terms of the field that I'm in, is, you're constantly giving in the role that you're giving. But where was I taking the time and space to refill my own being? And that's something that I've really worked on here in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. So as a culture, us all learning how to take better care of ourselves and be kinder. Well, hopefully that's something that might be a good thing to come out of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
One of our attendees, this is a great question. I was also curious about this. If you could clarify how Panchakarma and Ayurveda overlap and how they might be distinct or different from one another. And then just maybe a little bit more about, for some of us that don't know that much about Panchakarma, what the basics of the treatment might entail.
So Panchakarma is basically a cleanse that can be prescribed. But there's a whole field of Ayurveda that is separate from Panchakarma, okay? And so one can actually see an Ayurvedic clinician, and Panchakarma is not necessarily a part of that process at all. So they are, and it's prescriptive. So if there are challenges one is faced, as I mentioned, there was a diabetic person that I mentioned, and then there was a person there that was suffering from arthritis. What you can do is actually tailor the needs of different bodywork treatments that help to reduce one's, or calm down the dosha, or create the balance one's needs within the doshas. So the lady who asked that question actually is an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I would like, if she's willing to share her knowledge, that I would love to hear from her. And I think it was Mira.
Hi there. Let's get her unmuted.
Sure.
It's actually Claire that asked the question.
Oh, sorry, Claire. Okay.
Zero experience, so I'm actually I'd love to learn more. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious about that, like, yeah, like how they're connected, and then also like what so it sounds like those physical treatments that you were getting at the clinic Obviously, some of it you said was not really an enema, maybe an enema, but it sounds like there's actually like a lot of body work that happens. And so
there is. So I'm happy to, so each day I actually explain what happens, and it's fairly complex because every day, there's always going to be something called an abhyanga, okay? And the abhyanga is the oleation that we just talked about, and they have a special word for it. And that body work is pretty amazing, and that's something that you can get at some of the facilities here in town, as far as I know. But you actually have two people working on you simultaneously, okay? And you have, so the way prana or energy or chi, whatever you want to call it, operates from an Ayurvedic perspective, there's certain patterns that are present. And so the body work actually follows that pattern to help maximize how movement can be supported in the body. The whole purpose of doing this for 8 days is to drive enough oil into the body, because in addition to doing the body work every day, you're actually ingesting a certain amount of medicated ghee. And depending on health issues, some people take less, some people take more. And it's a concentrated amount that is typically not offered in any other setting, okay? And that helps further to ultimately pull the toxins from the 7 different layers that they call the tissues, the blood, the bone, everything into the gut, okay? And the whole idea with all this body work is to pull all these toxins into the gastrointestinal system, hence the nourishing enemas. Those enemas actually get absorbed into, not just into the colon, but into the general body, and offers then a further deeper cleanse in terms of releasing. And so each day you are worked on with depending, and then one instance would be taking you get a milk bath, but it's with rice that they actually are pounding into your body, okay? And then you get a steam bath too after you've had the body work, because skin is your largest excretion organ, and that helps to further detox you even more, okay? And then so ultimately that very last day, what you are going through what they call virachana, and you're given specific herbs that impact the liver, and you end up with what they call, basically liver dumping. And so all the toxins and everything actually are getting released even further into your gut and released. And so that last night, you get 2 sets of herbs that you take at 2 different specific times. And then the release happens during what they call pitta time. And that typically is somewhere between 1 and 3. Sometimes it's later. And that's where a lot of release happens, and it's quite complete. And what amazes me in that process is you have been getting regular, the enemas. They're not enemas because they're nourishing, and they're different than the enemas that we're typically aware of here in the United States. The water enemas and the ones that we get in the United States are actually really depleting for us, and this is actually very nourishing. And so, but because you're going at least 2 or 3 times a day, and you're maybe eating 1,500 calories, it's a vegan diet, you're amazed, or I'm amazed at how much still comes out at the very end. So, so is that helpful? Oh, I can't hear you, sorry.
Yeah, that is super helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so by body work, it sounds like there's sort of like massages with oils, and then so it's like massages with oils, and then sort of very cleansing enemas, and then the herbs.
Yeah. So okay. So I see we just have a few more minutes, and I want to be.
Sorry, we don't have to.
No. Yeah. So you, for example, you go down, you do a checklist of what your symptoms are for the day. Okay, if you've had any issues through the night, because the main guy who's doing the body work and Joshi confer about what's the best treatment for you for that day. Okay, you always get the body work that I mentioned in terms of 2 people working on you. And then they actually steam your skin, okay, to further push in the oil. And then often there's a second layer of body work that can maybe involve the milk that I just mentioned, the milk bath, okay? Or it can be a set of dried herbs that are in an oil that are actually rubbed on your body. And that's very helpful if you have pitta issues. It really helps to reduce heat in the body. And for me, I'm pitta, so it really helps, to reduce the heat. After that, then you actually are in the steam box for just 3 or 4 minutes because it's so hot. And then you go and take a shower, and then you are then given the basti. But oftentimes there's external bastis too. And the external bastis are actually placed on your chest or on your lower back, depending on what your issues are. For your lower back, if you have back pain, that type of thing, that more oil, okay, is placed in there, and that sits there for a period of time, for 15 minutes, and then that's taken off, and then you receive your basti. Then you're done for the day. But that can take an hour and a half, everything I just described to you, okay? So, and then lunch is given to you in tiffins, okay, which is their special lunch boxes that they have. And then you have a shirodara that's offered to you later in the day, usually about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then the evening meal, and then it's time for bed at 9. So there's your day.
Sounds wonderful. It's so detoxifying.
Right, right.
So it sounds like Panchakarma is definitely something that will change for you on a daily basis and probably all throughout your life. So what would you prescribe to folks right now going through the pandemic? Obviously a very different time for all of us. Do you have some practical tips for all of us collectively? I know this stuff is kind of based on individuals, but do you have some tips for us?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's some things that I didn't mention in the book because it's not something that's applied within Panchakarma, but back to oil. Coconut oil and doing a swish in your mouth, okay? And doing that for about 5 minutes every day is a wonderful way of detoxing your mouth and helping your gums, but it also helps to detox your body and moisturize your tongue, okay? So that's actually really nice. The other thing is if you have any sinus issues or allergies or whatever, doing a neti pot, and that's taking some saline, salt water, and irrigating your sinuses. That can be really beneficial. And then depending on what your health issues are, you can actually add there's some specific oil you can use for your nose. So that can be really helpful. Doing a yoga practice or an exercise of up to 20 minutes of your choice every day is really very supportive and life-giving. And then choosing foods that are supportive for you. Like today would have been a good day for some oatmeal, and adding, a non-dairy item if dairy is an issue for you, having a little ghee in that, and getting a little bit of oil into your life can be beneficial. And taking time for yourself and a little TLC. That's probably, those would be things to think about.
Ever so important, the time for yourself. We hope that you all can find those things for yourselves. Anyone else have any questions for Dr. Pentz?
There is one here that that Carolyn offered. I'm trying to read because it's a pretty long one here. Let's see.
Yeah, we could address anything that might be specifically good for people who are more vulnerable or immunocompromised. If you have any details on that end.
So, well, the self-care that I'm talking about would actually help support anyone, including an immune-compromised person. And so reducing unhealthy lifestyle issues would be important. Reducing alcohol use, reducing tobacco use, limiting the marijuana use. All that is something to consider, because ultimately, when we have some habits that are placing toxins in our body, we all can actually get immune compromised to some level. People who are drinking can actually have liver issues as a result, and that can immune compromise you. So cigarettes, as you know, especially with the COVID environment, you're at higher risk in terms of having health problems. So looking for ways to maximize your health is really key. regardless of immune compromised or what can be deemed relatively healthy.
Absolutely. What else are you up to these days, Dr. Pentz? Do you want to tell people where they can get more information about your work or your books or any upcoming interviews that you might have?
Sure. My website is drpentz.com. I finished actually a podcast with an Ayurvedic dermatologist from California that's up on my website. I have an interview with a practitioner who's fairly progressive in terms of gastrointestinal issues and stuff coming this Friday, but I think it's going to be posted in October. And a couple of radio interviews, one with KSFR is pending. And so some other things are happening.